Welcome back to the Brown Voices Project. I'm Punitha Rice, and the book, Brown Voices, South Asian American Experiences in Schools, will release this fall, 2026. I'm here today with Saloni Nahar. Saloni is a multi-hyphenate creative in the film world and now co-producer of the web series Anxious Brown Girl. She has training from the Second City, the Annoyance, the Black Box Academy, and she runs the Chicago Actors Hub, which connects and uplifts local artists. And she embodies all that the Brown Voices Project is about, forging her own creative path, defining success on her own terms, and most importantly, connecting and uplifting other creatives, and just being an all-around inspiration. Saloni, thank you for being here for the Brown Voices Project.
Thank you so much. And I'm so excited for your release in October. That's really, really cool.
Thank you. I'm excited too. But we're going to start with the past. What was it like for you being a brown kid growing up, going to school?
Yeah. First things first, I'm a younger sister, and I would recommend it to anyone because it totally changes your game. For example, my sister, she was only 3 years older, but just the difference between how many Desi kids were in her grade versus my grade, I feel like it was just very different. Like, I think by the time I got to school, there was more and more. And then finally, even when we got to high school, like there was an Indian Student Association. And while there weren't as many like brown kids in elementary school, we had our own community outside of school that kind of formed. My mom, for example, one of our longest like family friend, best friends is just another brown family because she approached them in a grocery store because she saw that they had a little like brown kid. So honestly, I think my parents just did a really good job finding community. And even though originally it wasn't just in our school district, it was like all these Desi families in surrounding suburbs, and we got together for all the holidays. And I feel like that kept us just really comfortable and connected to our identity.
Yeah, it's crazy because that's like I mean, this is your anecdotal experience, but that's reflected in existing research too. There's like a 2003 study from a researcher named Masakowski that finds across the board connectedness to one's cultural identity and having community that's from your own cultural roots, whether it's outside of school or outside of work or what have you, serves as a protective factor. And even if you face not fitting in school or not feeling like you have that community in school, it still serves as a protective factor and helps mitigate some of those negative effects of not finding community in school. So that's great that your family just set that up for you.
Yeah, part of it was also my mom taught Hindi and Marathi, and she taught it at our house. So weekly, a bunch of the kids would come to our house and we would learn these languages. And then we had like a trampoline in my backyard. So then afterwards, we would continue to hang out and play. And I think language was such an important thing. And when you're a kid, you don't want to learn another language, especially in this country when you have to speak English. And something that my mom said, which I feel like was funny, was she was like, guys, now you can like tell secrets to each other in other places. And she tried to make it feel good and cool to know this other language and tell us how it would give us more an upper hand and power in other situations. And yeah, I just remember that example because then we were like, yeah, okay, we need to learn this secret language.
Oh, that makes me sad inside because I have that with my own parents, with some of my friends, but my husband doesn't speak any of my languages, and it's very hard to pass it on to your own kids, especially when you're the only one who's bilingual in your family. So my kids aren't going to have that unless they of their own accord become really passionate about it as they get older, but I feel the loss of it. It's awesome to have that.
Yeah, what's kind of sad, because I don't know if it exists anymore, but there used to be an initiative through the United States government called Star Talk that gave all this grant funding to different people who were teaching languages that weren't commonly taught in school. So my mom for several years actually got this grant funding from the government to teach Hindi. And what that meant was she got money to pay the teachers, like food, all this stuff, but the camp was completely free. So because I knew about Star Talk, when I was in high school, I actually went to a camp to learn Mandarin Chinese completely free. Another summer, I did Hindi and Urdu completely free. It was at like UPenn's campus, University of Mississippi's campus, and we all stayed there in the dorms for the summer. And I bring this up because language learning in a summer camp setting, some of the best summers of my life, because kids from all over came, and like all we did all day was just learn these languages, and then at night we just like hung out and had fun. And again, it was just an incentive from the US government to to know about other people's cultures. And yeah,
Oh.
I'm not sure if it still exists, but it was running for a long time.
The federal funding initiative concluded its new grant cycles, so it is currently a defunct program.
I hope they bring it back
Yeah.
because for my mom's Hindi camp in the Chicago area, it was for kids. So these are kids who are in elementary school, and for the parents, incredible. Their kids got a free summer program, and I actually like assisted taught in this program when I was like a freshman in college, and some of my friends did it too. And even for us, like being, teachers in like college for these young brown kids, just very formative experiences, and we had a lot of fun just being able to like share in that with them. So, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like such an incredible opportunity. I hope it comes back, and I hope it comes back before my kids are too old to take advantage of it. What about in school? What was it like for you in, regular K through 12 outside of the cool stuff you got to do in the summer?
One of my first memories, well, I have a couple. I feel like the area I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, was very well celebratory of different cultures. I remember, I'm wondering if it was as early as kindergarten or if it was a little later, but I did Bharatanatyam in one of the surrounding suburbs, and I remember performing it at school in some kind of like maybe showcasing type of way. And then in fourth grade, we specifically had this Ellis Island event where all the kids who were from any kind of background, even kids who might have generations who've been here for a while, like whatever historic place that your family was from, you would come in and present about your country, and we would kind of go through Ellis Island like we were immigrating when that was happening. And that was also just formative for me because I remember my mom, we all had to make these little floats, like little cardboard box floats. And my mom really helped me make it look like our India one looked really cool with I feel like we put a little peacock figurine on there. I mean, we have so many cool Desi decor at home. And I just remember the teachers being so impressed with what I made and the presentation. And that was elementary school where I feel like there was probably just maybe a couple Desi kids, but by the time I got to middle school, we got the other elementary school in there. There was more of us, and then high school, all 4 years we had something called World's Fair, where a lot of countries had different booths, and then we had a talent show. Every year, India had multiple performances. I performed all 4 years. I really feel like from the beginning, every year it only got more and more available to me celebrating my culture. And yeah, I just feel really lucky about the progression.
That's incredible. Oh my gosh, I wish I could like copy paste your experience onto like some of the participants in the research that goes into Brown Voices. Some of it's heartbreaking, and you really, it sounds like your experience is such a testament to how empowering and how good it can feel for a student to grow up and feel like their culture is valued and feel like it's celebrated. And oh, I love that.
Yeah, I was born in the late 90s. So again, even when I talk about the difference between me and my sister, who was born in the early 90s, I feel like she experienced everything I did, but even the difference of 3 years, also just in those 3 years with more brown families coming in. And I think the biggest thing that you just hit on, is the community part. Because when I think about some of my best friends in middle school and high school, it was the other brown kids, the other Asian kids. But it wasn't like we band together because we necessarily had to. Like, people were definitely inter-friends with each other, but it was more just like we would take the AP classes together. We would be in orchestra together. It was just easy. And we didn't feel like, oh, we need to be friends with each other. It was like, you look like me, like, this is going to be our gang.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue into like the power of representation, both like in your school and surrounding you in your peer group, feeling like you're not the only one who looks like you, but also on screen. So I want to talk about Anxious Brown Girl. I would love if you could tell me about the project, what inspired it, and the role of representation in that work.
Definitely. I cannot take any credit for it at all. How it came together, Rumsha is someone who really go-getter, making her dreams come true, and she really wanted to act in something like this. And Aisha just got her screenwriting degree from her MFA from Northwestern, and she was also looking for something to write. And they met over, I believe, a WhatsApp group. There's this incredible community in Chicago called Chicago Custom, and they have a WhatsApp group with subgroups of Desis in law, Desis in entertainment, South Asians in, real estate, like all these different subgroups. And I'm pretty sure in one of them, Ramsha posted about, she's looking to work with screenwriters, writers to make something. Aisha saw it, they connected. I had connected with each of them individually before this. So once they decided this is something that they wanted to make, they reached out to me and they were like, hey, is this something that you want to co-produce, be a part of? I actually took a pause for a second because, earlier I said I'm a multi-hyphenate creative. And I think anybody who tries to do multiple things, when they're approached for any opportunity, has to consider what is it that they are trying to focus on at that point in time. And in that point of time when I was approached, it was just a couple months after I had spent 5 months in an intensive acting training program. And I knew I had the skills to co-produce and do more business side of things, but also historically, when I fall into that role, it is harder for me to also stay creative and act. So part of it though, so my other co-producer, Ramsha, she is the one who plays the anxious brown girl, and I actually play Rita, who kind of, Aisha wrote them as mirrors in the series, where I'm a Desi girl in the office who's a little more put together. I've been there longer. I get annoyed at this anxious brown girl, similar to how, sometimes in corporate settings when there's only two Desi women in the room, you reflect each other. And in the series, when this girl is making these mistakes or not doing her work correctly, I feel that. And I think what's been so beautiful about, I guess, co-producing this with our writer-director is she was writing it as we were starting to fundraise and starting to make it happen. And I know, and she'll tell you this too when you meet with her, she definitely took some moments or examples of how we are in real life too, and put that into the characters, just seeing our working styles together. So yeah, big overview of kind of how everything came together.
That's incredible. I love what you just said about that that feeling of when there's just two of you, when there's two brown women. I think we've seen a lot of film, a lot of TV shows around what it is to be the two individual people of color from a shared background who are almost going to be each other's representatives. Like, you understand that everything this person does is going to reflect on you and vice versa. But I wonder if that shows up in Anxious Brown Girl, the series.
Ultimately, in a way, I think, and the way Aisha wrote the characters too, and again, it's so wonderful to be able to be part of something like this because, I mean, every single film project works differently, but that means every director is different in the way that you're able to talk about your character and ask questions and Aisha was very open to hearing feedback around certain things. And something that came up for me after one of the initial table reads is I was like, I feel like Rita's really mean because, we have our anxious brown girl who is the protagonist, and then my character is getting annoyed at her. I'm getting and I'm like, I don't want audiences to not, see who I'm portraying. And something that Aisha brought up that I think really helped me think about it was she was like, I think Rita is one of the more reasonable characters in the whole series. She sees things very practically. I'm also a mom. I have a very young daughter in the series, and I've gone through a divorce, and I've just experienced a lot of life outside of the workplace versus our anxious brown girl. This is her first job. She's supposed to be someone who's coming in, eager-eyed. She's just trying to prove herself. But I'm seasoned. I've already done all of that. And I think once I kind of got that perspective, I was like, okay, even within the current dialogue, it's just knowing I'm not, hard on our anxious brown girl, or I'm not judging her because I'm just trying to. It's more I look at her and maybe there's tiny pockets of her that I can see in me, and I just have more years of experience. And I just, when you see that and you're like, you just want to shake that person. But how do you balance it in different moments? And I think that throughout it, there's moments where I am harsher and moments where I'm like, I don't even have time for this because I have a daughter, I'm going through a divorce, I have my own stuff going on. So there's definitely a lot of nuance in it. And I think she helped me figure that out for the character.
I love that because I mean, fiction is a mirror, right? So much of what we see is just such a helpful way to like reflect on our role in the world. It's why we read books. It's why we watch movies. Um, and I love that you're saying that even the not main character is not this like flat cardboard person. I love that there's nuance there because we see so few representations of ourselves on screen, right? So I don't want only the main character to be the relatable character. I want to see every time a brown character shows up, I want to feel like they're not a caricature.
Yeah, agreed. And that, again, one of the most beautiful parts of Anxious Brown Girl, Aisha wrote a bunch of them. We have an entire law firm that's a client for the marketing agency. They're all South Asian. And something that I say a lot, and I said it at one of our fundraiser shows, I get really upset when I hear people critiquing, to a certain extent, Mindy Kaling or Lily Singh and calling out their characters and saying, I don't relate to this because the South Asian experience isn't a monolith. And the way Mindy Kaling grew up is very different than how I grew up. And as a writer, you have to be able to write from your experience because what is most personal is most honest. And a lot of creatives and a lot of people who've written know that. Obviously, as you move in your career, you can pull from other people's experiences. And I think that, when she introduced Anissa into Never Have I Ever, she brought in someone else. Even in Sex Lives of College Girls, she had Bella, and then she also had Avantika come in as like a hot younger cousin. And ultimately, in order to have more representation on screen, I just want more people to feel empowered to write because you can't write. And again, like, when people are like, hey, like, come on, Hollywood, like, we need more brown representation. We need more brown writers. And I feel like I'm seeing it. I'm seeing so many young people now step into filmmaking, feel like they're allowed to. And that's all. Like, you can't ask the couple people who've worked so hard, by the way. Like, it's so hard. That's why I think I take, whenever, anybody critiques someone in an industry they're not in, I'm like, honestly, you have no idea because you have to be able to work in the environment that already exists. And when you're one of the first people doing it, you're going to do it how you need to. So
what you just said about when people critique that industry and they're not even in that industry, I could talk for hours about my feelings about this, but I feel the same way about books and about the commodification of books. Are you going to give, Great Expectations a rating out of 5 stars? I know I have skin in the game, so this is coming from a very personal space, but this is a story. And someone's coming along, consuming it like it's, a candy bar, and then being like, oh, 4 stars, 4.5 stars. To even put it on a 5-star rating scale is so bizarre.
Wow, this opens up a whole other thing, and I'm so happy that we're discussing it because I have a lot of thoughts. First one, last summer, I wrote and directed a short film called One Last Time that I wrote based off of my personal experience with my sister. And it's basically about a younger sister coming to terms with the fact that her older sister is getting married. Based on true events, I don't think we don't talk enough about that, The husband can be the best man in the whole world, but when you grow up in a girl family, what that means is when there's a marriage, Diwali is different, Thanksgiving is different, the future of your family is different because you go from being a sister unit to, it just grows. It's change. And I'm a Cancer, so I'm very sensitive and nostalgic all the time. So yeah, I wrote this film, and I think the best thing it taught me as an artist was exactly that, and exactly that nuance. Because originally, when you write something, I see it, I see how I think the film is going to turn out. I think one of the first cuts of how it came out wasn't exactly maybe invoking all the emotions I hoped it would. And we submitted it to a film festival that I thought it would get into because it was Chicago local and, it just felt like something that was achievable. It did not get in there. And again, as an artist, when we talk about being judged. That's how it works in a film festival. A bunch of people watch it, they judge it, they decide. But I'm glad I took that as a moment to be like, okay, I feel like the story works, but what do I need to change about this? And ultimately, after more revisions in the spring, it got into some viewings, and I even had the experience to watch it at the South Asia Institute in Chicago with other Desi people. And during that viewing, I ended up crying, which is, again, shows the power of, because I had seen it publicly in other rooms, or I got to, and I didn't cry there, but it was like, you see a film of two South Asian sisters on a screen, and I know that, again, a story based on personal experience, some people like have so many beautiful things to say to me and how they wanted to text their sibling after it, or like what it made them feel, and some people didn't really have that much to say. And that is like the biggest thing I took away from that was like, okay, as an artist, I cannot ever feel like anything I'm making is for everyone. But when I'm okay with that, the people who are going to see themselves in this, that is way more powerful than just trying to make something that might make someone feel like a 3. I would rather make some people feel a 10 and some people feel like a 2, and that's better to me.
I'm going to write that down for myself and like stick it on a sticky note because I have to keep that in mind too. And if you're trying to please everyone with your work, you're going to please no one with your work. You do have to not just niche down from like a business perspective, but for yourself as a creative, you really have to think about what is the story I want to read? What is the story that's truest for me? Because then you're going to find the people who are most like you and most feel most connected to the things you feel most connected to. Um, and the people who can't relate are just it's not for them. It can't be for everyone.
Agreed.
Yeah. We're here because of the Brown Voices Project, one of the missions of which is to inspire. So, highlighting South Asian Americans who live lives that defy the stereotype of maybe what my parents' generation might have thought success would look like for us. You're clearly living your own creative path. What does success mean to you?
This is such a loaded question, which can mean a lot of things. Something a quote that I learned early on, especially as someone who's like, I'm gonna venture into entertainment, was I think maybe you'll know who said this quote. I hope everyone gets like all the fame and riches in the world so that they know that that's not the answer.
I think it's Jim Carrey.
Yeah, that really stuck with me because in entertainment specifically, where there's a lot of vein present while also the need for validation, it's so easy, I think, to get in like a cycle of ups and downs where you might land something really big or get high praise, but then you're creative. So you gotta either go again or like it's a never ending cycle. As an actor, it's a never ending cycle of seeking validation. So for me, I think like when I was really thinking about like happiness and learning more into that, I learned that with a lot of studies, they say that it's like the value or the importance of your personal relationships. So for me, when I think about success, I think obviously I'm on an entertainment path that requires a lot of external validation, but I think about how important it is to me to maintain strong relationships so that when I experience success, it doesn't feel like I'm celebrating alone. And I think only by keeping strong relationships, showing up for my friends when they're winning, is the only way to feel good in this career, because I think otherwise, a lot of famous actors, I really hate this because I don't want to do this. They say, when people ask them, oh, what did it take to get to where you are? And they're like, a lot of sacrifice. I had to miss weddings. I couldn't be there. And that to me is hard to wrestle with because I think we're all people first experiencing this human life. And while we all clearly are pursuing something because there's something inside of us that knows that we want to give this to the world, what is the cost of that? And I think success to me would be feeling like good about how I showed up. And otherwise, I don't think it's going to mean anything to experience it alone. That's, I think, what Jim Carrey was referring to.
especially when you're in the building phase of something. And as a creative, like you're kind of always in a building phase. Even if you achieve what you think is the pinnacle, there's just going to be a new pinnacle and there's just going to be a new goalpost. But you produce well or you do something incredible, you now have to replicate that. You have to do it again. You have to strike gold again and again and again. And it's so hard not to get very narrow minded about that. In order to get there, there are trade offs. If you get to that finish line of the thing you've been chasing for years and years, is your life fulfilling? It's not just did you achieve everything you set out to do? And this is where that, old school definition of success comes in. I think for the generation before me, it was being settled in a new country. It was making sure your kids got to go to a good college. It was those very basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs things that mean that coming to this country, the sacrifices required in coming to this country were worth it for your future generations, for your descendants. There's a new challenge that emerges of how do I do this without losing sight of what the meaning of life is. And the people before us didn't even have the luxury to focus on the meaning of life, right? They were hustling.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective so much because everything of who I am and everything I say is because my parents gave me the comfort and security to do so, to the point where they actually brought food a couple times to Anxious Brown Girl set. They also sponsored, like, we got a lot of financial support, but they specifically sponsored our lunches, so they paid for it under the guise of it being vegetarian and healthy, because that's what my mom teaches in her cooking classes. So 100%. My dad always says, like, and I think we all have this story. He always said his number one dream when he was growing up was just to move to America. And he did it. But I will say, yeah, when you say that the goalpost keeps moving forward, maybe the biggest question, that I want to figure out is how to be ambitious and grounded and grateful at the same time, because it's such a dangerous path to go on. And I think some things that I've had to unlearn for myself is because, yeah, it hasn't been a perfect journey in being in the building phase. And I feel like the couple weeks when I was so ingrained in production, I think we all felt it. It was so impossible to show up for anyone else. And I had to keep telling people we were filming June to July, like, hey, can we connect like third week of July, third week of, like, that. And I think for me, because I've been doing this for so long, one of the best ways I can show up also is when my friend was like selling art at a festival this weekend. I knew I had to go there. My friend has started to post like travel vlogs. I know that I have to comment as much as I can, because when you are someone who's ever tried to do anything, doubt creeps in at the most unreasonable times. And I can specifically remember a tiny comment that someone left or a word of encouragement that was the difference between me being like, wow, this is like stupid and not gonna work, to okay. And knowing that it, like, that's how little it can be sometimes, made me realize showing up again. It could be physically going to someone's book launch, or it could be a comment online, because sometimes when you're constantly building and producing it, you're like, wow, am I just like doing something? And then you feel like everybody's seeing you just do this thing and seeing that it's not working.
I had to leave the screen for a second because this is Ruchika Malhotra. She's phenomenal. She's the writer behind this book, Uncompete. And her whole ethos is like a rising tide lifts all ships. And she talks so much about and amplifies so many other women who are, building their own projects. And when she wrote her first book, I remember I got like a newsletter from her or something. She said, if you don't want to buy my book, or if you're not in a financial place to buy my book, that's okay. Here are a million other ways you can support your author friend. And she gave like links to, you can leave a comment here, you can engage with my post, you can share the link with someone else, you can leave a review on Amazon. That stayed with me because I realized there are so many ways that are so low effort, low lift, low cost that you can show up for your friends and for the people in your life. And it makes such a world of difference for the people who are trying to build something.
100%. And hearing you say that actually made me think of one of my best friends, because it's also, I think, a narrative shift of like what support means. Because I think the way that we have graduation and marriage and baby showers ingrained in our culture isn't the same. And when we were crowdfunding for Anxious Brown Girl, we were all tapping into our communities to make this happen. And one of my best friends like donated $100. And I'm like, hello. And she's like, I refuse to like just show up when it's someone's baby shower or wedding. And I like read that message and I was like, wow, I really appreciate that because me and her together over the past couple years have gone to several of our like college friends' weddings together. We've celebrated these monumental moments. And when you are at these events, like that is what you're giving and that's what you're supporting. And it made me realize like we just don't have maybe a broad perspective shift of that is that, you know, the level to which we celebrate something in society. And I hope as women are continuing to get more just like it's just different than it was 20 years ago. So I think the way that we celebrate our friends is also going to change, you know. Obviously, bachelorette parties have been going really hard and there's a whole talk about how it's so different than it was 10 years ago. Similarly, as more women are making their own things, I wonder if we'll do bachelorette parties for that kind of success too.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope that we can normalize when our female friends, when our girlfriends are achieving things that aren't just the societal benchmarks of you've had a baby, you've gotten married. I hope that the things we do that are creating either for our own sake, creating something that benefits others or creates as a, you know, serves as a mirror for others, like your work with Anxious Brown Girl, you know, Ruchika's work with Uncompete, you know, my own work with Brown Voices. I hope that it becomes normal for us to celebrate those wins, you know, as much as we celebrate the ones where we're partnering with someone or starting a family. Those are big deals too.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like it just starts with people hearing a conversation like this or realizing that mental frame in their head because, again, it's just something that we're not used to, you know? We always talk about, oh, like, oh, this wedding's coming up. What are you giving or how are we doing? You know, like that's the framework that we exist in. But I think another good way, this is a friend who runs a lot of like races and marathons, and I think that that's another one that I think has changed in recent years, where people show up even to just like cheer on people who they don't know. And I think that's like a good example of a huge culture shift. And I don't know if, and maybe part social media has something to do with that, that like people are able to share, or Strava, you know, running. Maybe it was the pandemic that like running became a way for a lot more people to just like feel like something when we were sitting home all the time. And now it's a whole culture. People really show up, I think, at races and stuff. So that's a good example.
Yeah, that's such a good example. At the end of the day, we're all chasing connection, whether it's like we're looking for representation and seeing ourselves reflected on screen or in books. Like we're ultimately chasing feeling like we're not alone in our human experience. And I love that you as a creative get to support that. As a producer, you get to support that. And you know, being a part of the Brown Voices Project today, you get to directly be a part of that. What do you want young South Asians to know, especially young South Asian creatives or you know, young South Asian kids who don't want to pursue being a doctor or engineer?
You have so much time and you're allowed to change your mind and anything you choose, even if you are choosing to be, you know what's interesting, I wonder if we might kind of see a pendulum swing back in a sense where if someone is allowed to choose anything and there's not anything prescribed to them, like I hope that there's a young generation that wants to go into medicine or engineering because nobody's telling them that that's what they have to do. But you get to do anything. And, you know, for a long time, I feel like, yeah, I get a lot of praise sometimes from people in the South Asian community because I'm doing something different. But, you know, I was catching up recently with my friend who is later in residency in med school, and he's also Desi. And I'm just like so blown away by how he does his overnight shifts. He still came to watch my film premiere, and I was like, dude, I might be trying something different, but you are working so hard every day, and it really made me feel like I just hope that the next generation gets to just pick, and that means that whatever path you're in, you want to be there, and that's the biggest thing. It's just I think it's a reframe, you know, in a lot of independent film sets. This is like a joke that I make with friends. If someone is like not really showing up or doesn't have a good attitude, I'm like, hey, if you're in film, nobody forced you to be here. This is all
Yeah.
something that we actively decided we were gonna do.
Yeah.
So, like, we all get to be here. And I think, honestly, my only hope is for kids coming up now is they feel like they have the freedom to get to do whatever they want. And that reframe, I think, will just make everybody happier. And also, again, make everyone feel like you can change your mind. Because even as someone who's been acting for a couple years, I think what makes me a multi-hyphenate creative, and maybe you feel the same, is at any given point, if I'm like not really vibing with the auditions I'm getting, great, like let me write something, let me direct something, let me support someone else, because you don't have to be one thing all the time in order to be successful, because we have time and we can change our mind at any point. And I just want people to feel comfortable in that and not feel like everything has to happen as soon as possible.
Oh, I love that advice. I wish someone had told me that when I was a young, anxious brown girl, that I would have so much time and that I would be making so many career pivots and changing my major 3 times and that it would still be fine. It would all be fine.
What did you change your major from?
I went in as a broadcast journalism major, then I switched to comms, then I was very briefly pre-med, and I'm an example of someone who should have never picked going down that path because I failed organic chemistry twice. And then I ended up with a psych degree, and then I became a teacher, and then I got my doctorate in education, and then this long meandering road has led me here.
To broadcast journalism.
Here we go to broadcast journalism. It all came full circle.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that that's another good thing too. Sometimes I feel like we hear these things about like direction and picking a path, but sometimes I believe the best directors have also acted at least once, you know? Like I just think things are all connected, and if you've worked in a different industry, totally different, nothing is a waste of time because it at least will increase your empathy, your mind. I think the best creatives are people who also live their lives because you write from your own experience. And if you're not actively just present in your relationships and in the world, then what are you going to draw from inspiration? So I think everything, nothing can be a waste of time if it all connects to each other, you know?
Saloni, this has been like a master class in how to be a creative. This has been an incredible, like, life-giving conversation. I feel invigorated.
Too. Honestly, it's one of those things where I think when I'm given the opportunity to talk about certain things, I'm able to re-speak out loud some of the frameworks that I've ingested from either books or podcasts. But, when you're living it day to day, it's what, I mean, as a teacher, the best way to learn is to also allow yourself to like say it out loud. So I appreciate any opportunity to further ingrained in my head and be like, yes, Saloni, this is the point. This is what you should listen to, like what you're saying.
Yeah. These are my values. You need to say them to yourself. I mean, it's the purpose of prayer. It's the purpose of education. It's the purpose of, rote memorization. It's why we write. It's why we speak. Saloni, thank you for taking the time to be here today. Thank you for joining me for the Brown Voices podcast. Thank you for being an inspiration to both your peers and the next generation, to kids like my kids. And yeah, thanks for your time today. Thanks for being part of the Brown Voices Project.
Thank you so much for starting the Brown Voices Project and for so thoughtfully coming up with the right questions and engaging in such a great conversation. This has been equally, if not more, just great for me. So thank you.
This has been a conversation with Saloni Nahar for the Brown Voices Project. Subscribe for more.